Hi everyone. After all the madness of the festivals, especially after the weeks of Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, Sukkot can feel a bit like a slog. I think for many of us, we want to enjoy Sukkot more than we do, but actually, we're just tired. Building a sukkah, decorating it, finding a Lulav and Etrog, shaking it around, coming to shul yet again, it can all be a bit much. And in some way, it's sad because Sukkot is actually a very rich and fascinating festival that deserves people to be paying attention to it and enjoying it. And there's a lot more to it than often seems at first glance. Many people, of course, know the custom of building a sukkah, it's in the name, and the custom of shaking the lulav and etrog, but some of the more obscure customs aren't so well known. For instance, did you know that during Chol HaMoed, the last day of Chol HaMoed is called Hoshana Rabbah? Each day of Chol HaMoed, the days in between the beginning and the end, we do circumambulations around the bima in synagogue, carrying the lulav and etrog, and chanting and praying for rain, for salvation. On the last day of these circumambulations, the Great Circle, Hoshana Rabbah, not only do we do a circle once around the bima, but often many, many times, and it involves a variety of unusual rituals that are only done this one day a year, including taking the willow branches that we've used in our lulav and beating them against the chairs in the synagogue until all the leaves fall off. It's a strange ritual to see, and it's even stranger if you've been to synagogue on Hoshana Rabbah, where the music doesn't make any sense. Half the music is in the high holiday tone and mode, half of it's in Shabbat, some of it still is in weekday. It's very confusing from a musical and from a ritual point of view. And yet it's one of those things that's quite special about Sukkot that many people don't really appreciate. The other is the significance of water in Sukkot. At the end of Sukkot, this coming Monday on Shmini Atzeret, we change our prayers from having prayed for dew since Pesach to beginning to pray for rain. We don't have to pray very hard for rain here in England, but in the land of Israel, there are two seasons, the dry season and the rainy season. And they switch right now at this time of year. And in particular, at Shemini Atzeret, the last day of Sukkot, it switches to us praying for rain because it's very important that during the rainy season, the winter months and early spring, the rain falls in the right amount and the right ways. Because without it, there won't be a plentiful harvest in the spring and in the summer. So we say a special prayer called Geshem, or rain, in order to start changing our prayers, and every day after, until Pesach, we pray for rain instead of for dew in the Amidah. But it's not just rain. There was in the ancient temple a rather strange practice of actually pouring out a water libation. The priest would climb down to a pool, now in the city of David, an archaeological site on the side of Jerusalem, but then in the center of Jerusalem, which they would fill up ewers of water and bring them back up to the temple and then spill them over the altar. They did this for several days. It was called Nisuch HaMayim, or the water libation. And it wasn't just that the water was being poured out as a siman, a sign for rain, but it was also that water itself represented life and fertility. And evidently, one of the aspects of this ritual was that each night, during the time the water libation was performed, the nights that we're in right now, Jews from all over who had come to Jerusalem for the pilgrimage would have a raucous party all night long called Simchat Beit HaShoeva, the festival of the water drawing house. You had what was described by the Mishnah as a rather extravagant party. One of the rabbis in the Mishnah claims that he could juggle 8 torches at the same time at these parties, and others say that if you never saw the joy of these parties, then you never saw any joy in your life. And although it's quite hard for us to imagine what this would have looked like 2,000 years ago, it has been revived. And today in modern Israel, you can go to many a party for Simchat Beit HaShoeva, and you can even go to see the priests, or rather priests in training, the rather eccentric Temple Institute, who trains priests to someday resume their practice in the future temple, go and draw the water and bring it back up to the temple. Nowadays, they're accompanied by people on their smartphones and playing on guitars, but actually it hasn't changed quite so much as we might think. So Sukkot is more than it seems at first glance. Yes, it's about our Sukkot outside, and it's about our ancestors and inviting the Ushpizin, the ghosts of those who have died, to come and sit with us and be our guests. It's also about fertility and rain, both the shaking of a Lulav and Etrog, and also about the fragility of how easily the agricultural cycle can be disrupted. We'll read on Shabbat the book Ecclesiastes, or Kohelet in Hebrew, which emphasizes so deeply how transient and temporary life can be. But it's also about celebration and joy. And perhaps the greatest example is the wild party atmosphere of the ancient temple for Simchat Beit HaShoeva. And I hope that this year for Sukkot, whether or not you've quite gotten in the spirit or whether you're still tired for Yom Kippur, can find a little bit of that somewhere in these days. Maybe the rain dance, maybe the water party, maybe the transient philosophy of Kohelet. But Sukkot is a lot more than it seems. And I hope as we approach the last days of it, it's a joyful time, a Zman Simchatenu, a time of our rejoicing for all of us. Hag Sameach.